Okay, good evening everybody. Just getting set up here. Okay, hopefully you can all see me there. So as introductions first, my name's Adrian. I'm a member of South Dublin Radio Club, and my call sign is Echo India 9 Hotel Alpha Bravo, or EI9 HAB. And if you're brand new to radio or amateur radio and you have no idea what that is, stick a question in the live chat, or if you're on Zoom with the club members, you can ask away there, and they'll clarify it for you. So you're very welcome to this live stream from South Dublin Radio Club, and the purpose of tonight is really, it's just a general open night about amateur radio. One, to introduce new people to the hobby. Two, for those that are about to undertake the license exam, the HAREC exam. We're here to answer any questions that you may have. So I'm just double checking the live stream here now for a second, just to make sure that I'm actually going out. So okay, no picture. Okay. If someone can feedback there in the live stream. Okay. That's fine. Hopefully you can see me now. The issue with this is I've multiple screens here and a radio, so I'm trying to keep an eye on everything, and I'm not a great multitasker. Okay, I can see it popped up there now. And there's probably a little bit of a delay as well. So anyway, yeah, so really the whole idea is to introduce you to an amateur radio station, I suppose, and run through a few things. And simultaneously we have a radio net on the 80 meter band, and I'll talk about that in a second. So we'll have a live demonstration of amateur radio contacts, and yeah, as we go along, if you feel the need to ask any questions, put them in the chat. Now, I might not get to the chat very quickly depending on what I'm doing. We've done this a few times before, so if someone else on the side there from the club can answer questions, that would be great. If you're new to this whole setup and you're spurred to know a little bit more this evening, as I said earlier, our club is live on Zoom, so please, you can DM us via Twitter. It's at SDR. It's at South Dublin Radio Club on Twitter. What's the exact Twitter handle now? I'm forgetting now myself. It's holy moly. Yeah, so at SDR or at SD Radio Club, at SD Radio Club. Yeah, that's the Twitter. Sorry about that. And Facebook, if you go to Facebook, it's South Dublin Radio Club on Facebook, and you can DM there, and we'll get you the link. I know some of you have obviously got the link for Zoom already, and that's no problem. What I would say to you is, if you want to join us on Zoom and you have a shortwave listener number, maybe put that with your name as your login name, so at least we can identify that you're already in the hobby, and it just helps with screening people coming in and that kind of thing. But yeah, it's no problem. We were Zoom bombed once before, so sometimes we get a little bit paranoid about who's joining, but please do join this evening, and someone in the club will let you into the Zoom if that's what you want to do. Okay, so what am I going to do first? As I said, here I'm just clicking on a few different things. So what you're seeing at the moment, I know many of you all know what this is. On screen, there's three images. There's myself, obviously. There is my radio, which is this. It's a Yaesu FT DX3000, and it's a kind of a mid-range HF receiver. And I'll go through that in a minute when we're talking about stations. And then the other major piece of visual display, I suppose, is the spectrum display, and it's what's called software defined radio, and there's various proprietors of software defined radios. They're literally they can be the size of a dongle up to something maybe the size of this mobile phone, and it's basically the receiver architecture that would be in a radio this size, but all can be manipulated via software, and it demonstrates the radio spectrum as a visual interface, and that's what you're seeing on the screen at the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'll jump into the radio net for a few minutes, okay, and then I'll come back out and we'll have a chat about everything. But it's just to say hello to those that are on air. And as I said, we're on the 80 meter band. We had set the frequency for tonight at 3650 kilohertz, lower sideband, and we'll talk about lower sideband later as well. But there was quite a strong continental station there underneath us, and I'll talk about that in a little bit as well as to how the propagation changed. And it kind of, we had to move basically 3 kcs up, so we're now on 3653 kilohertz. Which is normal enough in amateur radio. You kind of have to move around sometimes to get a clear spot. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump into the radio net, and we can say hello to whoever's on air. Oh, by the way, I'd love an indication in the chat if you can hear the radio. By the way, that would be great.
Echo India 7 Golf Uniform Bravo, the Dublin Radio Club. Now, go ahead there, Dave. You have a copy of me, will you?
Jerry, can you hear Tony? Bounce over to you.
Negative, very, very low in the...
Okay, well, he's obviously copying you. Tony, you can pick that up. I don't think Jerry is actually hearing you, though you're obviously hearing him. Back to you, Tony, and that's you. Okay.
Yeah, fine indeed. Okay, no problems there, Joe. Echo India 7 Golf Yankee, Echo India 7 Golf Uniform Bravo, the Dublin Radio Club. Yeah, fine indeed. Okay, so just take a standby and see if anybody else is there. Echo India 7 Golf Uniform Bravo, listening QRZ, 80 meters.
EI2 SDR.
Go ahead, Adrian. Echo India 2 SDR, Echo India 7 Golf Uniform Bravo, go ahead.
Echo India 2 Sierra Delta Radio from or to EI7 GUB. Go ahead, Tony.
Yeah, fine, Adrian. Sorry, I just missed the last bit there. Can you just come back to it?
Yeah, EI7 GUB from EI2 SDR. Yeah, sorry, Tony. Just got myself a little bit backwards there. So I'll just say to the people on screen as well watching, so I have dropped my own call sign and I'm now using the club call sign. So that's South Dublin Radio Club has its own call sign. It's Echo India 2 Sierra Delta Romeo, so EI2 SDR, for the purposes of this live stream for the club. So hopefully you're picking me up loud and clear there, Tony. So what I said to the viewers was that I'd jump into the net for a little bit and just give a kind of general feel as to how the net works, and then I might just drop back out again and explain a little bit more about the station. Back to you, over.
Yeah, okay, Adrian, Echo India 2 Sierra Delta Radio, Echo India 7 Golf Uniform Bravo, returning to South Dublin Radio Club. Yeah, fine indeed. It's a good attendance anyway at the moment on Zoom, and good attendance on the radio as well. So I'm not too sure. You want to take it and just go back to seat Echo India 5 Kilo Oscar, and then Kevin is there as well, Echo India 3 Echo Uniform, before you get back out. So do you want to just pass around the group, will you?
EI7 GUB from EI9 or EI2 SDR. I have to keep remembering that. Yeah, I might give a general call out, Tony, just to see who's around, because I know a few people have been popping up and down a little bit, and we might just do it by the book then, and like take signal reports and all that kind of stuff. So CQ 80 meters, CQ from Echo India 2 Sierra Delta Romeo, CQ 80 meters from EI2 SDR, South Dublin Radio Club net, standing by for any calls. EI7 Golf Yankee from EI2 SDR. Good evening, Joe. I don't think we had a QSO about an hour ago when I was using my own call sign. So yeah, much more readable actually. The band seems to be gradually improving, obviously, as the sun goes down. Signal report for you at the moment is about a 5 and 5, I'd say, at the moment. It's just above the noise floor for me here. Back to you, Joe. Over.
Yeah, okay. Adrian, Echo India 7 Golf Yankee here. Now, when I get a 4 and 5, it'll be fully readable, but copying notes are like put the missing bits together, as it were. Sorry about a 4 and 5, but Tony had remarked earlier, or no, Derek actually had remarked earlier that the noise is a sort of signal at 5 also, so with that, copy are reasonably okay. Good to talk to you after a long break. So Echo India 2 Sierra Delta Romeo from Echo India 7 Golf Yankee.
Yep, I'll copy, Joe. Yeah, it's the noise floor is about an S5 or 6 with me at the moment, and yes, indeed, we haven't spoken for quite a long time. I suppose, given everything that's happened, that's pretty understandable. Yeah, good to hear you in there, Joe. It's fantastic, actually, and hopefully we can get back to the clubhouse soon. What I might do is I'll just take a standby to see if there's any other callers there from EI2 Sierra Delta Romeo, South Dublin Radio Club Net.
EI3EU is here, Adrian, and I have it.
EI3EU from Echo India 2 Sierra Delta Romeo. Go ahead, Kevin.
Okay, EI2 SDR. Yes, get me loud and clear. You're a good 5 and 9 plus, and naturally you're only down the road from me. Hey guys, so there you are, no problem at all. I just thought I dropped out for a while. I was trying to get the tablet to work. It didn't work. So I had to get the computer, and I wedged it here into the shack, and you know how small my shack is. Hey guys, so there you are. Okay, back to you. EI2 SDR from EI3EU.
EI3U from EI2 SCR. Yeah, thanks, Kevin. You're 5'9". It's actually bang on 5'9", I think, for me here on the radio, and it's actually a little bit improved on earlier on. So yeah, all good. Great to hear you in there. I'm just looking at the live stream here, actually, on YouTube, and someone was or Jeffrey was asking, why does the club have a call sign? Well, the reason for that is that well, one, there's actually a station at the club. Okay, so we have radio equipment there, so just explain that to people, of course, Kevin. So if we're activating that equipment, we'd use the club call sign, and then we also utilise it for any field days when we're going out and about. That's generally what we would do. Although we haven't used it for a while, Kevin, have we? Over.
Okay, no problem. EI3 returning to EI2 SDR. Okay, fine that, Adrian. I'll let you go on and see if we can get some other people up here. So there you are. From EI3U.
EI3U from EI2 SDR. Thanks, Kevin. Will do. I'll call the CQ. CQ80. CQ from EI2 SDR. CQ80 from EI2 SDR. South Dublin Radio Club Net standing by for any calls. EI6 EG from EI2 SDR. Good evening, Joe. You're coming through okay. It's an improvement on earlier on. It's probably a 4 and 4, I'd say, but readable okay. Back to you, Joe. Over.
That's around the SDR that I have up there, so that's looking pretty good there. Sean called in there as well.
EI6EG from EI2 SDR. Yeah, okay, Joe. Kind of a little bit of QSB, some fading there on the last transmission, but you're still in there. I don't know if anyone else is around. Have you got a copy on Derek on your side, Joe? Over.
I've got the oil coming in there over the CI 4 on 18. Have to to get the Sean, you'll use HTC call again. If you do 5 or 6 by yourself, something like that,
Yeah, EI7GUB from EI2STR. Yeah, Tony, I kind of lost Joe there. You went down very weak. I don't know if he was trying to bring someone else in there. Over.
Echoing the 8 Hotel Charlie Bravo, echoing the 7 Golf Uniform Bravo, the South Dublin Radio Club. Now, say a boy there, Sean. Okay, Sean, do you have a copy on Adrian there? He's using the club call sign, echoing the 2 Sierra Delta Radio, Roger?
Echo India 8 Hotel Charlie Bravo from EI2SDR. Very, very low copy, Sean, over.
Yeah, go again, Sean. Adrian has a low copy on you, Roger? Adrian, I think you have a low copy on yourself as well. Echoing the 2 Sierra Delta Radio, echoing the 7 Golf Uniform Bravo, the South Dublin Radio Club network.
EI7GUB from EI2STR. Tony, could you take up the club call sign there for a while, and I'll just go on the side here to the live stream. Is that possible? Over.
Yeah, okay, you go ahead, walk away, no problems at all. We'll give it a general call out. You walk away. CQ 18 years, echoing the 7 Golf Uniform Bravo.
Okay. So, sorry, a bit distracting here. I'm watching the delay on YouTube. So, there was a question there earlier on about what is a radio net. I'll actually think that was one of the earlier questions, and yeah, it was from Kilgore Trout. Yeah, so what is a radio net? A radio net is basically where a station, a single station, acts as an anchor for a net. It could be a local community radio net, it could be an international radio net, and it's just like the term internet. It's a network of radios, and what you generally have is a net controller, or a station that's the primary station that opens the net and controls the net from there. So our club has various radio nets actually throughout the week. We have a net on a Sunday morning on the 40 meter band, which is on 7123, but there's also which is kind of on shortwave, is more geared towards longer distance communication. But most net activity is actually on local VHF radio, and I just have a small radio there. That's a radio for VHF and UHF. It's one of these infamous Bofangs, and they you'd get 2 meter radio nets, or 70 centimeter radio nets very regularly throughout the day all over the world. And they're usually at a scheduled time, and it's usually it's a known time and frequency where people come together to have a chat about radio, I suppose. What else would you be doing? And then obviously you could schedule an ad hoc net like we've done tonight. We've just put one on 80 meters. So that's what the radio net is. So I'm just ticking down through the live stream questions here. Yeah, I did the club call sign thing there. The license process. Oh, Fergal. Well, I might go to the license process later on, Fergal. I'll do the station stuff first. So, okay. So there was, I think, there's a few questions in there as well about 80 meters and sunrise or sundown and all that kind of stuff, and what we were talking about there. Okay, so what will I do? Yeah, okay. So I'll show you the station, which is probably the easiest thing to do, and I'll do that with a picture, which I'll actually show you my first station. And I just have to make sure that OBS is playing ball here. And what I'll do is I'll explain the station equipment, and then I'll explain what was going on radio. if you follow me. And then if anyone wants to interject there with a question, we can do that. Okay. So, I'll take some of those out there. So this was my first actual HF station, and it's a very simple setup. Okay, so what you have is on the right hand side of the picture, that blocky thing with the two white squares, that's the power supply. Okay, and the standard power supply for radio, it's around, it's 13.8 volts for some reason, but they generally work from 12 to kind of up to about that range, like car battery kind of level, but you wouldn't get much time out of a car battery on voice. You then have the transceiver, which is the thing in the middle. That's the radio itself. That's an old Yaesu FT840. That was my first radio. I got that second hand, and that's basically what you call a shortwave radio, or a HF transceiver, and that radio is configured to transmit and receive, well, to transmit anyway, on the amateur radio bands, which are portions of the shortwave spectrum that are allocated to radio amateurs. I'll get to that in a second. And then the thing on the left is what's called a matching unit, or a tuner. Okay, and without getting too detailed about that, this is a box which basically has an inductor and capacitors in it to basically match the radio's output to the antenna. And that's basically it. And the bit you can see is the antenna, which is the kind of the magic of amateur radio, or magic of radio or telephone or wireless broadband, doesn't matter. It's all about antennas at the end of the day. You can have all the radio you want, you can have all the power you want, but unless you have a suitable antenna, it's for naught. Because basically you could put a 6-inch nail at the end of this and load it up, and the equipment would appear to be working fine, but you're not sending out any signal really. And for those of you that are taking the exam, and those of you that are interested in radio, the antenna really is kind of the crux of the whole thing, because we all live in various different situations, and we can or can't do various things as regards sticking up antennas. And the planning regulations are different in different countries. Planning regulations in Ireland are different to wherever else, and we all know there's it's tightening up all the time, this kind of stuff, with homeowner associations and that kind of thing. But just to give you an indication of what is being run on my side this evening, is a, where is it now? Had a nice picture as well. Well, there's a picture of it anyway from the outside. It's a pole on the side of the house, and it's a 20 meter doublet or dipole antenna. It's called a doublet because it's fed with twin line, and I'll try and I had a better picture there. Let's see if we can dig that out. Okay, I'll try and get back to that in a minute. But anyway, basically the antenna is broadside to the side of my house. I'll put that back up again. If you think you're looking at the gable end of your house, the pole is there, and the pole is there, and the two wires are coming off at an angle. Okay, there's two sides to the antenna. It's a dipole, so di2. There's two legs to the antenna, and it's 20 meters. Okay, so what do I mean by 10 meters or 20 meters? Each leg, each side of the dipole is 10 meters long. It's actually a little bit longer than 10 meters. You often find that you want your antenna a little bit longer than the band that it's cut for tuning purposes. And then, as you can see, if you look at the picture at the top of the pole, there's like a cylindrical thing. That's just where I have the connection to the two legs of the antenna, and you can see this kind of black ribbon going up to it, and that's called ribbon line or twin line or ladder line, because it looks like a ladder. But basically it's two wires that are spaced that go up to the antenna, and that wire connects directly into my tuner, which is here. Okay. Now it could be fed with coaxial cable as well, but the reason I personally picked the twin line is that the connection of the ladder line to the antenna is very simple. It's literally the two wires come up from the line and literally branch off into the antenna, and they screw into two ports on the back of the tuner. And the other thing about the ladder line antenna is it's actually it's a very good multiband antenna. So this particular antenna is cut for what's called the 20 meter band or 14 megahertz. But with the tuner, I can actually pretty much tune it for any of the amateur radio bands from 10 meters all the way down to 80 meters tonight. So it's a good multi-purpose option. Okay, but as I was saying, the dipole or the doublet type antenna may not be something that's suitable for you. You might live on a smaller lot, or you might just have a balcony or whatever, so therefore a vertical antenna might be more suitable for your situation. But either way, there's lots and lots of different types of antenna solutions for what you want to do, and you can get on air really no matter where you live. It just takes a bit of thought and a bit of consideration. And if you're studying for your HAREC exams, part of that study is to inform you how to do these types of things and how to apply that knowledge to construction of the antenna. So that's it really. It's the power supply, the radio, the tuner and the antenna. Okay, they're the four main blocks. So the 80 meter band itself, okay, so if we go back to the waterfall, what I'll do is I'll zoom out here. Okay, so we're now on the 80 meter band, but the radio spectrum goes from 0, okay, all the way up to, you know, gigahertz, you know, very high frequencies, because it's part of the electromagnetic spectrum. Okay, so the spectrum is vast, and this is the slice that we're using tonight. Okay, and this is a lower portion of the shortwave band. So what's shortwave? Okay, so shortwave has a peculiar property in that you can bounce signals off the ionosphere. Okay, I hope you can see that. I'll zoom it up a bit. And it was discovered kind of around probably the 1920s or something like that, that if there was radio before that, but when they started to they started with low frequencies, but when they started to use higher frequencies, and specifically when they got between 3 megahertz and 30 megahertz, they noticed a property that the signal seemed to go way beyond the horizon, and in actual fact you could bounce a signal right around the planet. And the reason for that is that at these particular frequencies the sun ionizes a part of the ionosphere, or a part of the atmosphere, a layer of the atmosphere, and that's why we call it the ionosphere, because it gets ionized. What does that mean? Ionization is just that layer of the atmosphere gets electrically charged, and some of the signal is bounced or refracted or reflected, or whatever way you want to term it, back down to Earth. So you can get this whole thing where you can skip over the horizon. So that's essentially what we're doing tonight on 80 meters. Now 80 meters is not the most ideal for like intercontinental communication. It's actually it's, you know, it kind of skips a little bit shorter. It's kind of good for local communication, and it's pretty good around, like, say, Europe, say, from our position. But it's not too good during the day, and the reason for that is, if I can get this little graphic up, is that during the daytime, if you can see on the right hand side here, the sun ionizes various layers in the atmosphere, and more layers are ionized obviously during the day in direct sunlight. And the bottom layer, which is what we call the D layer, is it absorbs radio signals quite well at the lower frequencies on the shortwave band. So it kind of hoovers up signals on 80 meters, and it's quite noisy when you're actually listening on the radio. And that's why this evening when we came on, we switched on at 7 o'clock just to test all this out, it was very difficult to hear each other. But as the evening has progressed and the sun is set, if you can see by that graphic on the left hand side, is that D layer disappears pretty rapidly after sundown, and the frequencies on the shortwave band, they tend to propagate off the F layer, which is, as you can see, is 200 to 300 kilometers up into the atmosphere, rather than the 50 to 70 kilometers up that the D layer would be. So you get a much better skip through the atmosphere. And that's why you'll often hear a lot of local radio nets on 80 meters after dark, because it's actually quite a good one for that. 80 meters is good for local radio nets and kind of middle distance radio nets after dark. So that's that. So back to the spectrum. So we're on the 80 meter band at the moment, and I know some of you have been studying for your exam. So the 80 meter band, as you can see, it goes from, if you can follow my cursor there, from 3,500 kilohertz all the way up to I better get this right, 3,800 kilohertz. Okay, so basically from here to 3,800 is allocated to amateur radio. Okay, but as you can obviously see, there's signals way outside of that. Okay, and they go on forever, and these are all different things. These are all like commercial operators. They're weather satellites, or well, not weather satellites, maybe down here, but navigation beacons for maritime, radio markers for airports, international broadcasters like BBC World Service or China Radio International, or all that kind of stuff. Anything, you name it. Military stuff, it's all in there. Spy stations, it's all there. And this is the reason why radio is regulated. You're allocated a portion of the band, so we're not all interfering with each other. And then furthermore, our portion of the band here on 80 meters, and this is only one of the bands for amateur radio, is further subdivided. So you can see here, this is from, some of you might recognize this from studying. You can see here on the 80 meter band that the lower portion of the band is reserved for CW, which is Morse code. And then you kind of move up into digital modes. Some of you might know some of those digital modes. FT8 is the most popular digital mode at the moment, and these are generally used for lower power transmissions, and you can get quite good worldwide coverage with them. And then, as you can see, then after a while the band splits then for voice modes, and you can see from 3,600 up you can see what's called SSB, which is the voice mode or single side bands. Okay, so we're down on 3653, I think. So that's this portion here. So it's all modes, okay, are allowed. Okay, but you can see that there's different parts that are reserved for different things. Now that's not by rules; it's more by convention, and amateur radios, kind of radio operators, respect that kind of thing. So SSB. So what's that? If you're new to it. We'll try and find a radio signal that's non-amateur, and I'll come out here. Okay. Double DSP. Okay. I'm going to turn on the radio here and hopefully we can pick this up. Okay. We won't labour the point too much. That's a commercial radio station, and as you can see in the middle there is a white line. Okay, that's what's called the carrier. That's basically the power that the radio station is putting out. It's the carrier wave or the carrier signal. And you'll notice that either side of that, if we zoom right in, there's this stuff here. This is why SDR is great, because you can actually visualize everything. And what that is that's the information that's modulated onto the carrier. Okay, that's the information that's being patched onto it. Okay, and normally in commercial radio, so like your FM stations, it looks pretty similar. They use both sides. They patch information onto both sides of the carrier. Okay, at the lower and the higher frequencies, depending on the width that they're using, and it's double side banded. So each side is called a side band. Okay, but this doesn't come into play if you're just listening to commercial radio. However, in amateur radio, and we'll go back down to 3653. We do broadcast double side banded on AM and FM. We can do that, but generally on shortwave we use single side band. So we only use one half, if you follow me. And what that does is it saves on power, and we also suppress the carrier wave. So suppress the carrier, so you don't see that white spike either. So it's single side band suppressed carrier. Where were we? 3653. So we'll dial that in. So, and actually if you watch my radio here, you can see that the I'll actually change that on OBS. If you watch the radio here, you can see that as I change the SDR, you can see that it's controlling the radio as well. Okay, so and what we do is we'll zoom in down there, and we'll have to get away, because if I go to listen to that now, you can see it's picking up that interference spike. We'll remove it, and we're just on the one side band there. So you can see that this is where playing around with the width of the filtering and so on is helpful. You can eliminate things. So you can see there, if that was two side bands, it would capture that interference, and that's if you're listening to your commercial radio. That's what might be happening, is that there's an interference spike. If you get interference that's coming over your whatever you want to listen to. But anyway, that's the side point. So we're just using lower side band there. So I'll just go to the just checking the questions here on the live stream, but I think some of the guys are picking up the questions there anyway. So what we'll do is we'll jump back in. EI9 HAB. Yeah, EI7 GUB from EI2 SDR. Okay, Tony, I thought you might want to hang on to the EI2 SDR there for a second, but you're giving it back to me, so thanks very much. So no, I was just explaining a few things on the side, as you know, and I think some of the guys in the clubs are picking up on the questions there, which is great to see. How's the net been going, Tony? Over.
He was actually nearly 10 over 9. So everybody else is
EI7GUB from EI2SDR. Okay, Tony, no problem. I've actually had to back off my power here a little bit because I'm triggering a local infrared sensor light, and it's causing interference when I go above a certain power level. I don't know if any on the live stream noticed that earlier on when it was coming off and over with someone. You could just hear this hash of noise for about 3 to 5 seconds. That's what that was. So I had to back the power down a little bit. So I'm running 15 watts at the moment. But I'll try and give Joe a shout there. EI7 Golf Yankee from Echo India 2 Sierra Delta Romeo. Over. Echo India 7 Golf Yankee from EI2 SDR. Yeah, Joe, I'm copying you okay. Readable enough, probably in the 4s, and signals about a 5, so 4 and 5, I'd say. Yeah, I don't know if you can copy me or not, but I was telling Tony I've had to back the power down a little bit because I have this. There's a neighbouring PIR infrared sensor light to me here that on certain frequencies at certain power levels I seem to trigger it, and it's not well shielded at all. It causes interference for about 3 to 5 seconds when it switches on, and then switches off again when I come off the mic. So I've actually upped the power to 20 watts there now, and I'm just going to see what happens. Back to you, Joe. Over. Yeah, EI6EG from EI2 SDR. Yeah, I'll copy, Joe. Signals come up nicely there. I'll give you a signal report on the next over. Actually, I wasn't looking at the dial. Back to you, Joe. Over. Yeah, EI6EG from EI2 SDR. Yeah, Joe, it's going fine. There's a few on there, and a few of the lads are answering the questions on the side. So, like, it's really open for whatever people want to ask, I suppose. I suppose I'm probably repeating myself, like, from the last stream. But it's whatever people want to ask, I suppose, and if they want to join in on Zoom. Now, your signal report is fine. It's come up into the... it's perfectly readable anyway. It's 5, probably a 5 and 5 anyway, Joe. Over.
Yeah, I'm not quite catching that there, Adrian. I asked you question there today. I put this to 2 years here. So just load the radio, Joe, and pick you up with the hash radio. Give me a shout out on it.
Yeah, EI6EG from EI2SDR. Okay, Joe, go check Hack Green there, and you can let me know how things are working out there.
Yeah, we're working out just right fairly well. Sorry, just a second there now. The first calling, this is Houston, on the QSY. Thank you very much. With the frequencies in use, and we don't need interruptions on it there at the moment.
So Joe's saying QSY because someone's come up on QSY means if you wouldn't mind moving frequency. You know.
Okay, I think you're looking out fine here at the middle of the round there. Everything's going pretty good. The Zoom is working pretty well as well, and the radio working pretty good there too. So now we're top of it all, Adrian.
Yeah, EI6EG from EI2SDR. Yeah, hopefully you're copying me a little bit better now, Joe. I'm running about 40 watts at the moment. It's just, as I was explaining to Joe, I'm just triggering a local sensor light here, which is causing a little bit of interference each time I come off the key. But I suppose for anyone watching, this is a good demonstration of the type of things you can be up against when you're using radio. There's a lot of electromagnetic interference out there. It's good to hear that I'm going out to Hack Green in the UK all right as well. I might give a call out, Joe, and see if anyone else is by. CQ80 meters from Echo India 2 Sierra Delta Romeo. CQ80 meters. CQ80 meters from Echo India 2 Sierra Delta Romeo. South Dublin Radio Club net. Standing by for any calls. EI6EG from EI2SDR. Yeah, I can see someone tuning. All right, Joe. Maybe it's someone going to call in. Over. So what you can see there, that noise that you're hearing in the background, that's a carrier. That's someone tuning up a radio. That's what happens when you tune up a radio. You put out a carrier, and it can cause interference. That drives people bananas. Oh, okay. So I just had a question there from Sandy. I was listening to the radio at the same time. When I reduce the power from 15 to 20, or change the power from 15 to 20 watts, do you have to record that in the logs? Yeah, well, generally would record the power. Yeah. And I don't know, maybe someone correct me on that. I don't know if that's required or is just the time you are transmitting and the station, but generally in your log you would note the power. As much for, yeah, I suppose going back to that whole sensor light thing, that's one of the reasons I'd note when I first started noting the power was quite valuable to me, because I have this sensor light issue after dark. Never been really able to solve it, and so what happens is that below a certain power level, my radio won't trigger it. Okay, and it was only by noting the power levels on each on the frequencies I was using that I realized, okay, I can use a little bit more power in some bands than others after dark, and that was a good reason to note down the power. But whether it's necessary to note the power, I don't know. Maybe someone can jump in there. I can't remember, to be honest. But anyway, because I'm using the club call sign tonight, by the way, I'm actually using a paper log so I can bring it back to the club. So you can see here, if the date of the contact, the time it started, okay, the frequency that I was on, the mode, so it's LSB tonight, okay, that's what I'm using. The power, in watts, the call sign of the station, the signal report sent and received, time ended, and then any notes. Okay, so notes could be can be anything, you know. Oh, it's Fred. I spoke to him last week on another band, or it's Fred. I spoke to him this time last week on the same band, and the conditions are much different. You might make notes about the guy's station or something like that. You know what he tells you, and then when you have a conversation with him again or a QSO, you know you can bring up information that's mutual to both of you and keep the conversation going. Or you might want to make notes about the ionospheric condition, that conditions were bad that day or whatever. So, you know, people generally have a notes column. I have a box here for QSL. QSL is the receipt system that we use in amateur radio. Sometimes you send cards to each other, or it's done electronically. And you can say whether you sent confirmation to the station or not. You know, the exchange of signal reports is the confirmation, but there's this kind of receipt system in amateur radio that people kind of abide by. Most people do anyway, and some people like actually getting old these cards or QSL cards. They're like postcards really, with the and they're just it's like a postcard from my station. It could be a picture of my local area or whatever I decide to put on the card, with the details of the contact. And the guy sends me a similar card. So you get these cards from all over the world, and it's actually quite nice. It's kind of quaint, I suppose, but it's a physical thing. It's a nice thing to have, and some people have thousands of QSL cards. Other people don't do it anymore, or just have never done it. They just do it electronically. So Kilgore trout. I have a random wire antenna 67 feet and copper earth pole about 3 feet into the ground. The earth doesn't make a big difference as I plug it in and out. Is 3 feet enough of an earth? That is a very difficult question to answer, because like my first, when I got into amateur radio about 4 years ago, and I had a very similar I had a wire running around the outskirts of my garden, and then it went to coax, and I don't know if yours is the same thing, but there was off the braid of the coax, which is normally the way we do it. We ground the shield of the coax. It wasn't even as deep as yours, Kilgore, at all, and it did make a big difference to the interference that I was receiving. Now, the big thing about these long wires is that you have to remember that no matter what wire you put up, it's within the envelope of the interference that's in your house. So your fridges, your mobile phone chargers, all that kind of stuff, and it could be something specific that's nearby, that's actually I'm not sure, you can't tell, but it sounds like to me that you might have quite a high level of interference nearby, and you might want to try and sniff that out. And actually, I put something up on Twitter during the week, and I'll just show it to you. Where is it now? Actually, I'll go to me on Twitter and see if I can find it. And I'll just to show you just what I'm talking about, Kilgore. So I'll just show you this. This was a replacement Chinese charger that I got for my daughter's laptop. She's got a small Lenovo, and I plugged it in downstairs to charge up her laptop, and I came up to go on the radio, and I couldn't hear a thing. And when I looked at it, pretty much straight away, I knew that the only thing I'd done different in the last 2 months or whatever was to buy this charger. And I went back downstairs and I unplugged it, and these interference spikes all went away. So it really pays to have a look around to see if there's something in your house that is causing you interference. And a lot of these chargers are dreadful. They go onto the into your main supply and basically put interference into everything. Comes up through your power outlets and into your radio. And obviously the radios are receivers, and they're very sensitive receivers, so they pick this stuff up. Now, if you don't have software-defined radio, you can go old school. I don't know if you have an old medium wave or AM radio at home, a little transistor radio. And you know, years ago, you could get your radio, you put it up to a socket or something like that, and it go bzzz, like that. Bzzz. You can track down. They're kind of good interference sniffers that way. But if you turn on your AM radio, if you don't have this sort of software-defined radio stuff at home, and you get, you know yourself, you could hear this, you know, very heavy interference, then it could be something in your house is causing quite broad-banded interference. So it could be worthwhile exploring, just looking at what's in your house. I know when I go on the radio, especially when the family aren't here, I switch off everything except the radio equipment, TVs, the whole lot, even the alarm system, because the alarm system is wireless as well, and it has a module that seems to cause interference through the power outlets as well. So and that actually drops my noise floor down significantly as well. So all these modern gadgets, unfortunately, work against you, specifically with shortwave radio. Oh, you see Jamie's in there as well. Hello, Jamie. I hope your field day went well. I didn't get to hear. Something happened that day. I knew you were out and about, and I think we put it up on Twitter as well. But I didn't get to come on. Actually, club members of ours were doing an IOTA activation. I didn't even get to do that. That's an Islands on the Air activation for people that don't know. That was a few weeks ago as well. So time. Yeah, Kilgore. It's about electrically quieter areas, exactly. And if you're using the SDR and SDR Uno, brilliant. Especially if you can get it on a laptop and maybe just make it a little bit mobile, that when you're switching things on and off, that you can see, oh, there's that interference gone. It was definitely that dodgy Chinese. It's always dodgy Chinese chargers in my view. I don't know, like, who's policing this stuff? I mean, this stuff is all supposed to be regulated, and it's not supposed to be causing this amount of interference. But anyway, so.
What's the name of it? Kilo Echo India Tango Hotel.
So that's a station calling into the net there.
Dublin over the top of my head there at the minute there. Over. No, I didn't hear anything at all. Try the name again, over. Kilo Echo India Tango Hotel. Kilo Echo India Tango Hotel. Over. Yeah, Roger Keith. Okay, lovely to hear you. Thanks very much for coming back. And maybe when another time we can have a longer chat. Back to you, and then back to the next control. EI5KO ONEDI.
That's Belgium.
ONEDI from EI5KO. Yeah, no bother, John. I say I'm not normally arrived for the net on Sunday mornings, unfortunately, because due to another hobby, so I don't get on. So you don't hear me that often on, but we definitely have had contact before, all right. Definitely, because you're in the log here.
You can see there, I've widened the filter a bit to hear Keith a little bit better, but if you just watch that, you can narrow it down to 1.8 kilohertz there, and it can make it a little bit more easier on the ear to listen with, but you're losing, as you can see, half the information. Okay. And sometimes when the signals are weaker like that, you narrow things down a little. So there's Kevin there now. He's quite close to me.
Indeed. John in Belgium
so you get
coming
the
through
filter
reasonably well. Now, funny enough, I'm trying to say, Keith, if you can hear me, You were very up and down with me, and you're very
So you can see there's pros and cons there to the filtering.
The joys of HF.
By narrowing it down, it makes it a little bit easier to deal with, but the quality suffers.
Niall, I think Niall is still in Northern Ireland, and he's using, is it 5 watts he's using, something like that? 5 watts? 817. I don't know. I couldn't hear Niall actually, but I know Joe was trying to contact him. Okay, back to you indeed. Back to you, Tony. EI7GUB, EI3U.
EI2SDR.
Yeah, okay, when you see us, just one sec. Yeah, okay, Kevin, no problems at all. Okay, go ahead, again, Echo India 2, Sierra Delta, Romeo, Echo India 7 Golf, Uniform Bravo, the Circle Weather Club, go ahead.
Yeah, EI7GUB from EI2SDR. Tony, I just caught the end of one of the last QSOs there. I think John from Belgium was on there, Oscar November 8 Echo India. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's John in Belgium, Oscar November 8 Echo India, Roger.
I might just give him a try there, Tony, just to see if he's there. EI2SDR to Oscar November 8 Echo India. Are you by, John? Over. Nothing heard. I think he was going off anyway, but it would have been a nice contact to get in anyway. It was just to demonstrate that 80 meters it's actually not that bad for Europe either. Any other call-ins there, Tony, from EI2SDR?
Okay, Echo India 2, Sierra Delta, Romeo, Echo India 7 Golf, Uniform Bravo, with the group. Well, no, just the lads themselves at the moment. John is still there. He's just answering a question from Rafael. So he's just giving it a couple of minutes maybe, and then he'll be able to give him another call. But that's what he's doing at the moment on Zoom. He's just answering a couple of questions. So there you go. Okay, do you want to take it and pass around the I'm not sure if you talk to Keith yet or Kevin anyway. So if you want to take it, Echo India 2, Sierra Delta, Romeo, Echo India 7 Golf, Uniform Bravo, take over with us.
Yeah, EI7GUB from EI2SDR. Yeah, I might give a general call out, Tony, although I'm running on low power at the moment, and see how things go. CQ 80 meters, CQ from Echo India 2, Sierra Delta Romeo, CQ 80 meters from Echo India 2, Sierra Delta Romeo, South Dublin Radio Club net, standing by for any calls. It's a negative copy, Tony, over.
Go ahead again, here's Echo India 4 CI, Echo India 7 Golf, Uniform Bravo.
How are you, Tony? Listen, I'm going to go QRT. This is a good idea, and I will listen in future. But Joe is the best signal of the lot. Joe's lovely and strong with me, and I can sit back in the armchair here and just listen to him. And I don't know what else is an outstanding signal. But I say 7-3 to all, and thank you very much for letting me in. So I put it back to Tony, 7GUB, 7-3 Tony, and the rest of the group. Echo India 4, Charlie India, now clear. Go ahead, Tony.
Yeah, okay, Pierce, no problems at all. Before you go there, just let me see if Adrian has a copy on you there. Echo India 2, Sierra Delta, Romeo, do you have a copy on Pierce for this?
Yeah, Roger, Tony, I might try EI4CI from Echo India 2, Sierra Delta Romeo. Do you copy me, Pierce? Over.
Yes, Sierra Delta Romeo, I do copy. You're not very, very strong, but readable. There's no doubt whatsoever about that. And I also copied EI, a gentleman over in Belgium. You're a lovely strong signal, no problem at all. But conditions are different, difficult, and we all have in different kinds of areas, and the night and the propagation is just something to keep you alert. I'd say good night to all, and thank you once again there for letting me in, and I'd go back to the medications here. The very best over to you, Tony, and of course Joe, 7-6 Echo Golf. Oh, I wish it was like this on 2 meter sideband with us, Joe. You're a lovely signal altogether, and So back to you, Tony. EI7GUB, Echo India 4CI now clear.
ON80I, Pierce, over.
Well, lovely signal, 5 and 8, 5 and 9, go ahead.
Tony, may I speak with Pierce, over?
Yeah, go ahead, John, go ahead.
Thank you, Pierce, lovely to hear you. 5 and 9 plus 20, and at one stage you were 5 and 9 plus 35. EI4CI, ON80I in Belgium, over?
No problem at all there. No problem at all. It's the antennas that do it. 2 half waves in phase for 80 metres. About 200 and something odd, 250 feet. 100 foot high in the middle. About 40 to 50 feet high in the ends. And about 250 feet above the wire line. Down through the ceiling here. Into a Johnson matchbox. Listen, the very, very best to you over there in Belgium. And I hope you and all your family are safe. Echo India 4 Charlie India.
Yeah, Roger, Pierce. EI4CI, ON80I. Everything's well here. My antenna is not so grandiose as yours. A simple double bazooka with the apex of 11 meters above ground, Pierce, over?
You have to be happy with what you have. That's the bit of ground you were given. And they're not making any more land. That's the certainty. So just be happy with what you have. And the same goes for me here, there. Go ahead.
Yeah, Roger. Well, I'm very happy. In fact, many years ago, about 27 years ago, I picked this house with the idea of putting some antennas. So 73 Pierce, I wish you a pleasant evening, and I look forward to hearing you on Sunday. EI4CI, ON80I, over?
No problem at all. The very, very best to you and your group there. EI4CI now clear. 7-3 to all.
Back to you, Tony.
Yeah, okay, John, and very good night today, Pierce. Great to have you in there tonight. And as John said, we'll probably talk to you during the week. 73 is Echo India 4CI, Echo India 7 Golf Uniform Bravo, the South Dublin Radio Club. Take care, and we'll talk to you later on. Okay, Adrian, back to you. Echo India 2, Sierra Delta Radio, Echo India 7 Golf Uniform Bravo with the South Dublin Radio Club.
Yeah, EI2SDR. Thanks a lot, Tony. I'm just wondering if I could try for John there. Oscar November 8 Echo India from EI2SDR. Any copy, John? Over.
John, do you have any copy on Adrian there? Echo India 2 Sierra Delta Romeo, over?
EI7GUB from EI2SDR. I might just give a call out again. CQ80, CQ from Echo India 2, Sierra Delta Romeo. CQ 80 meters from Echo India 2, Sierra Delta Romeo. South Dublin Radio Club net standing by for any calls. There's that interference there.
Do you have a copy on Mark Echo India 4 Alpha Charlie Bravo, Adrian?
Negative, Tony. I'll try again. Echo India 4 Alpha Charlie Bravo from EI2SCR. Any copy, Mark? Nothing here, Tony, over.
Yeah, okay, because I think it's 2 and 3, I think you said. I hope that's correct. That time, Adrian,
Yeah, EI7GUB from EI2SDR. Yeah, it's my power levels as well, Tony. I've just had to back down. I did put up the power, but I just got that local interference fed back again from that sensor light that plagues me at night time. So unfortunately, I'm probably just not making it over the hills to Mark. So yeah, that's unfortunate. I don't know if I might just give another call to see if anyone else is there. CQ80 CQ from EI2STR South Dublin Radio Club Net, standing by for any calls. Echo India 5 Kilo Oscar from EI2STR. Go ahead, Keith.
Good afternoon, Adrian. This was call now. You're about 5, 6 times left here. No problem doing there.
EI5KO from EI2STR. You're a bit low with me, Keith. You're actually a good bit down now. It's readable with difficulty. I'd say it's a 3 and 3 at the moment for me. And I'm not really sure why that is, because we should be getting each other a little bit better than that. Over.
Somebody on side there as well, up about half a day there as well. So I'm getting a lot of noise on side there as well. Just as you went there as well. So anyway, pass back to there. I2SDR from Echo 5 Kilo Oscar.
Yeah, EI5KO from EI2SDR. Yeah, that's fine, Keith. I suppose it would be worth explaining to people watching on the live stream. The best filters are the two filters stuck on your side of your head. I think it's the only way to pick things up out of the noise. You can manipulate it all you want, but it's just the practice of listening, I suppose. Okay, I'll try again. EI2 SDR CQ 80 meters from EI2 SDR South Dublin Radio Club Net, standing by for any calls. EI7 GUB from EI2 SDR.
Yeah, okay, Echo India 2 SDR, Echo India 7 Golf Uniform Bravo. We're calling there, yeah. It's a bit noisy and a bit quiet and stuff.
Yeah.
You never know what you're going to hear. I think Joe's still there, Echo India 7 Golf Yankees and 6EG and 8KV as well. Still boys. But if you want to try for John again, I'll give him the shout actually. After November 8th, Echo India 7 Golf Uniform Bravo, the Dublin Radio Club. John, do you have any copy on Adrian there, buddy?
Yeah, Tony, I just heard you calling my call sign, but I have a lot of interference here now. There's someone now coming in on the side. So for the moment, I'm not hearing much from Dublin. Line 7 Kilo and API, over.
Yeah, okay, no problems at all, John. It's just the way the boundaries now at the moment, unfortunately. I think the noise is starting to creep up now with this side even. Okay, no problems, John. Okay, Toronto Studio, Echo India 7 Golf Yankee, Echo India 7 Golf Uniform Bravo, the Dublin Radio Club, Echo India
7 bottom line, conditions tonight are not good. Even on 80 meters, I don't know if there's kind of solar disturbance or whatever. It's generally better than this, but you can notice the difference. John in Belgium, right? He's coming in very well to us, and that's just that longer skip in the signal. But the local stations it's kind of pants really. It's not great, and but I mean this is part of the whole amateur radio gig, I suppose. It's people say it's like battling the conditions, like you're working against the conditions sometimes, and sometimes it makes things like contests very interesting, because contests are scheduled for certain dates, and the conditions on the day are the conditions on the day, and that it kind of, you have to work with that. Obviously then you've got other issues. I'm pretty sure John is quite an impressive, from what I remember, antenna setup, so he would have a perhaps better receiving gain on his antenna, so he's able to pick up weaker stations, or when conditions are poor, he can make up that difference in a way. Whereas I have a very simple wire antenna, which can be prone to noise, and that that kind of limits my setup in a sense, and this is the thing. You're listening to stations on amateur radio. You've got guys on farms, with big directional Yagi antennas that they can point wherever they want. They're high gain receive, high gain transmit, and then you've got someone with like a vertical with a loaded coil on it on a balcony in a city, and they're both trying to work away on the same situation, the same band, but yet they do, and that's kind of part of the fun. This sort of stuff doesn't dishearten amateur radio operators. It's kind of the fun of it in a way, because 80 meters tomorrow you'll hear the term, the band will be open. It could be rocking, and everyone's like, at that slice of the spectrum could be offering the best opportunity for communications around the world at that particular time, and everybody jumps onto it, so and this is why we have these things called clusters on the internet, where people are spotting stations and you can see it. Now, some radio people think that's cheating or whatever. It should be just what you hear. But look, I mean, it's horses for courses. But when you watch the clusters, you can actually see where things are opening up, and you'll often hear, oh, it's open to South America, or it's open to wherever. And you can see there with John on 80 tonight, it's open to continental Europe, obviously, but locally it's not so good. So, I mean, we did 80 meters tonight because it's interesting, the shortwave stuff, because you can pull in the longer distance things. But as I said, realistically, if you were doing a local radio net, you'd be using a small 2 meter radio or 70 SEMS radio for that kind of thing, because it's just reliable. You've got reliable communications, and like, if you're not sure about that kind of thing, just to maybe show you. Oh yeah, I'll use this. I don't know if you can see that there. So I can't remember the name of the software, but there's a website where you can put in your station at certain frequencies, and it takes the terrain into account. And basically on this, the red is where my signal gets out. Is poor. There's obstacles in the way. So if you look at my situation, the Wicklow and Dublin Mountains are directly I'm right below what's called the Hellfire Club here in Dublin. It's 2 kilometres behind me, so I'm pretty much blind to the south as it regards line of sight transmission, and you can see that line of sight wise I get out reasonably well to the west and to the east. This red stuff here, that's all building clutter, the city, and that obviously then causes me issues getting out into Dublin Bay or whatever. So that's why with VHF we use what's called repeaters, these antennas that are up on the hills, so we can basically send the signal up and then down over the obstacle to whoever we want to get in contact with. It's the same thing with mobile phone masts, the cell towers. It's exactly the same thing. It's all radio. There's maybe one of the lads will know and put the name of that website in. I can't remember the name of it, but it's very interesting, because if you're setting up antennas, it could be of great benefit to you, this sort of modelling, as regards where you should situate an antenna on your house. And if you're putting maybe like a directional, say 2 meter VHF antenna, where you might want that pointing, if it's a fixed antenna, obviously if you've got a rotator it's a different thing, but most of us start off with pretty bad infrastructure. We don't have fancy things that turn our antennas and that kind of stuff, but there's lots of different types of software packages out there, or websites, to help amateur radio operators and people who listen to shortwave listeners and radio hobbyists in general, as to, you know, how you could potentially improve your receiving situation and then obviously your transmit situation. So that's that. They're talking about me on the radio. There, Jamie's put it up. The website's called Radio Mobile. Great, brilliant, Jamie. Thanks for that. So yeah. Anyway, what was I going to say? Oh yeah. Pretty much anything you want to do with in amateur radio, there is probably a website or a forum for it, because amateur radio is like this collaborative thing. People just do stuff for free, all the time, and that even goes down to some of the software that's developed for amateur radio, the protocols, the digital protocols for radio transmission, like FT8 or whatever. They're all people in their spare time just working away, and then they just let it off into the wild, and people modify it or update it, or it goes for everything, and it's a fantastic community in that way. How information and knowledge is shared. Anyway, I'll get rid of that map. The funny thing is that the stations that are on the net at the moment, they're talking about conditions the whole time. They're just holding out for that breaking conditions where things will get a little bit better, and that's what they're doing. Fergal, any information on the license process? Okay. So the license, right? So you have to have a license for an amateur radio station, and that's given by ComReg, which is the communications regulator. Or if you're in another country in the UK, it will be Ofcom. In the States, it's the FCC. Because, as I often say, the radio spectrum is valuable real estate. Okay, and it is regulated, and it's a regulated entity, and it goes back to what we're saying about band allocations and all that kind of stuff. So pretty much they want anyone using the spectrum to know what they're doing and not to cause interference to other users, be it commercial or military or whatever. Now, there are radio pirates out there, of course. There's people that take the mick in any walk of life, but in general the stuff is respected. So the license is granted, is given by ComReg, and it's based on an examination. And the examination in Ireland, it's let's say it's delegated down to what's called the IRTS, the Irish Radio Transmitter Society, and they're a representative body for amateur radio operators in Ireland. In the UK, it's called the RSGB, the Radio Society of Great Britain, and they do the same thing. And it's pretty much the same in every country, that the national representative body for amateur radio operators run the exams, and it's all volunteers. So if you go onto the IRTS website, Fergal, there is there's exam information there. There is course material, and not only is there course material, there is acres of information on things like YouTube. But pretty much there is a written exam. It's multiple choice. You sit down. There's two parts to the paper. There's a technical part, which is all about pretty much radio infrastructure. So transmitters, receivers, antennas, radio propagation, that kind of stuff. And then the second, I think that's part A or part B, I'm not sure, but the second part is then operating procedures, how you operate on the air, how you behave on air, various things like that. Your knowledge of the spectrum, Now, it can sound very detailed. It is a little bit, but to be honest, if you put a little bit of work into it and do a little bit of study on the side, you should be able to pass it yourself after maybe, I think I did it myself. There was no support courses at the time in 2017, I think, and I think it was 3 or 4 months just, you know, in the evenings or whatever, just sitting down and going through the stuff. And of course, the guys in my amateur radio club were a great help. But since then, and hopefully Rafal will jump in there, there is now a national kind of body, or I think it's called the Shortwave Listeners Club or something like that. I'm not too sure of the name, but they basically come together on I think it's via Zoom or one of those packages, and they're running now classes for upcoming exams, and there's been a big uptick over the pandemic of people studying for this, and so if you go onto the Irish Amateur or the IRTS, that information is there as well, and you can plug yourself into one of those groups, one of those say pre-exam study groups basically. Is Morse part of the exam? No, not for the initial license. There's a separate test for Morse that you can do at any stage once you've got your license. In actual fact, how you generally know somebody has done the Morse exam is they have a shorter call sign. So my call sign is EI9HAB. I don't have the Morse exam bit done, and generally if they pass that, they get the shorter call sign, the 2-letter call sign. So it's optional. Now, someone brought this up before, actually, maybe someone in the chat can answer it. I don't know if you actually have to have the Morse ticket to do Morse. You know, I think once you're licensed, you can actually do it. I don't know, maybe someone can correct me if I'm wrong on that, because there's definitely people out there generating or doing machine-generated Morse code, just like they do digital modes, and I doubt they have Morse done, or otherwise they'd be doing it themselves manually with a key. So I'm not sure if there's a prohibition on you necessarily practicing yourself and then just getting on the air yourself, but generally people do the Morse little exam. Cost of the exam, I can't remember. It's less than €50. I don't know. It's not that expensive anyway. Yeah, there you go. You don't have to have the exam. That's Irish Ham Radio, and I can't remember your name. Oh, Dave. Yeah, he's got a great YouTube channel, by the way. He's way more up the ladder of me as regards his knowledge and stuff like that. And he's actually documented his whole journey from getting interested to taking the license and setting up the station and that. It's actually very well produced. It's a good job, Dave. Actually, it's a very good channel. Jeffrey, the cost of the exam or the class, or sorry, you're asking that question back. Actually, Jeffrey, you've been taking the classes, haven't you? I think, or dipping in and out. Anyway, you can chat away about that yourselves. See who's on.
Mark EI4, Alpha Charlie Bravo, over. Yeah, Roger, I see you there, Mark. There we go, very good. Yeah,
So it's just to say to you, obviously we're doing this stuff online because we have to. We want to, but we don't have. The clubhouse is not open at the moment because of the pandemic. Our clubhouse in particular is in a county council run community centre, and it's just the brakes aren't off on that yet. So hopefully when we get word from the county council, we'll let you know when we're back. And if you're local to us, please come down. We have radio equipment in the club. Now it's not the club is it's something else during the day. as regards what the local community use it for. Our stuff is in cupboards, but we have HF radios there, we have VHF radios there, and we obviously have an antenna on the building, or antennae on the building for both. So like if you don't have equipment and you want to see what it's all about, you can come down to the club, it's not a problem, and we can show you through all that stuff. Okay, Dave, EI 1819, I think I was EI 1719 actually. I think that was my SWL number, but thanks for dropping by. I'm not sure if there's any use, but it's just to give a demonstration of a live station anyway.
Tell me the ON9 again, over.
Yeah, no, ON4, Oscar November 4, Tango Alpha.
Just uploading.
Okay, Oscar November 4, Juliet.
I'm just updating my log for tonight because it's a bit distracting with the live stream, and then you're trying to log down signal reports and all that kind of stuff. It's a bit of a mess, but I'll tidy it up later on another page, and we'll bring that back to the clubhouse. Anything else?
Yeah, Roger. Okay, there is a station, Oscar November 4, Echo India, who goes a lot to Ireland, over.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, actually, I think I've worked them all doing the Echo India in the Tropics.
So just while the lads are talking there, I'll put up another graphic thing. So just in case you're starting off and you're concerned, you're going to get your license, but you've limited scope for antenna, or maybe your living conditions are such that you can't be like shouting into a radio because it disturbs other people or whatever. Obviously Morse is being talked about, but there's also digital modes where you can use your computer and either a radio like I have here, or these newer software defined transceivers, and that's a great way of getting into radio as well. So I had a little map there just to show what can be done. This is it's a website called PSK Reporter, and what it does is if you send out a type of digital signal, it picks up. There's these kind of it's basically a network where receiving stations feed back in. It's like a beacon network that they've received your signal. And this one is for what's called FT8, and this one particularly is on what's called a 30-meter band, or around 10 megs. And this will be me at night time now, using about 20 watts on FT8. And I would regularly get contacts into Australia, Indonesia, Southeast Asia, following what's called the grey line, where the difference between night and day is actually good for ducting signals too. So don't get too concerned about having to set up a full SSB station if your current conditions just don't permit it, or your budget doesn't permit it, or whatever. There's lots of different ways you can get into radio, and there's a lot of people actually out there are die-hard what's called QRP radio operators. They only use low power. They don't see the value in building big powerful stations. It's like the minimum amount they can get away with. And I've told the story before. I was listening to a guy once in the UK, actually on 80 meters, and he used 300 milliwatts into he was using 300 milliwatts into an electric fence. He was not into electric fence, into a fence along his property. He was a farmer, and I was listening to this conversation, and he was having a conversation with a guy down in the south of Spain, and he had some sort of homemade little transmitter receiver, and he's literally out sitting in a field with a wire plugged into a fence talking to somebody in Spain. So there's lots of fun things you can do with radio like that.
down in Wicklow. I don't know if he can hear me or not, but EI4 ECB. Do you have a copy on Echo India 3 Echo Uniform? I don't think he's getting a copy on me, Tony. So there you are. Hand it back to you and let's see if you can get someone else from or get him yourself. EI3U back to you, 7GUB.
EI2 SDR.
Yeah, okay, no problem, Kevin there. I think he's otherwise engaged. Okay, go ahead, Adrian. Echo India 2, Sierra Delta Romeo, Echo India 7 Golf Uniform Bravo, with the South Dublin Radio Club next week.
Yeah, EI7GUB from EI2 SDR. I don't know how things have been going, Tony, but I know conditions haven't been great. And I'm aware that they're trying to keep things going on the side there on 80. Will we just wrap it up and just retire to Zoom and the live stream, or do you want to keep going over?
Yeah, okay. Echo India 2 Sierra Delta Radio, Echo India 7 Golf Uniform Bravo. What's going well? Totally up to you. I don't mind. I'll go over to Zoom. That's no problem. If you want to call it, so leave it to you there. But Joe's still there, 7GY, Derek is still there, 8KB, and of course Keith and Kevin. So if you want to call it, and we'll go back to Zoom. Echo India 2 Sierra Delta Romeo, Echo India 7 Golf Uniform Bravo.
Yeah, EIC7GUB from EI2 SDR. I'll give a final call, Tony, and if there's no additions or if you or Kevin don't hear anybody new, we'll go QRT. CQ80, CQ from Echo India 2 Sierra Delta Romeo, CQ 80 meters from Echo India 2 Sierra Delta Romeo, South Dublin Radio Club net standing by for any calls. Okay, nothing heard on my side. So anyone else there want to add anything? Okay, negative. So whoever's still buying frequency, by all means, you stay on frequency if you wish to do so. But Echo India 2 Sierra Delta Romeo South Dublin Radio Club station is going QRT.
Fantastic. I know you're going to carry on a little bit with YouTube, and we'll be on Zoom for another few minutes. So, thanks indeed for the effort tonight, and you look at all the listeners there, and anyone looking in there on YouTube as well. So, it's always great to have the support. So, 73's Adrian. I'll throw around the group, and then we'll go back to Zoom.
Okay, guys, we'll continue the live stream for a few more minutes, but if anyone wants to join us on Zoom, we might start to close things down a little bit, and you can, by all means, come into the other room. Okay, I'm gonna pull this. Okay, guys, thanks very much for joining us. it's difficult to know sometimes what people want to see or hear, or that kind of thing. It's really just to run the station. Um, if there's if you've any more questions, just let me know there in the chat. I mean, obviously the guys are some of the guys are staying on air, but the reason why I'm jumping off is that it's the same stations that we've been talking to, so there doesn't seem to be much going on otherwise as regards other stations calling in. So there's no point going round the houses continually. Obviously they got John in from Belgium. We didn't make that. I didn't make that contact with him because I'm just running low power at the moment. Dave, just before you go, can I ask if you share one antenna with the for the SCR and the transceiver? Yeah, I do. And how that's done? Okay, so I'll show you something actually, because I had a different setup a while back, Dave. I can show you that. So this current radio, the Yaesu, the FTDX3000, it's not the newest radio, but it's of the newer generations, if you know what I mean. And it's not quite as new as an ICOM 7300. You'd know what I'm talking about there. But this radio has an IF out. So what does that mean? Basically, you can pump the received signal out from the radio into an SDR. So it's not sharing the antenna as such. You're actually just taking a received signal off the radio and diverting it out. And I know that. I know you know what I mean by that. Now, the older radio that I had, this one. Hopefully you can see that, the old Yaesu FT840, and I haven't got the switch anymore. You can buy commercially a switch. Let me roll back just so for people who don't know. Okay, so if you want to use an SDR, there's huge risks with SDR sharing an antenna with a radio. And what do I mean by that? You can't have an SDR plugged into the antenna that you're going to transmit on, because when you transmit, you'll fry the SDR. Okay, so what you have to do is you either get a radio like the one I have at the moment, where you can actually take the received signal out from it with no risk. You're just pumping it out through a different channel, or you get what's called an antenna switch. And there's a commercially available antenna switch from MFJ, which is and there are other ones, but MFJ is probably the cheapest one you can get, I'd say. A lot of people don't like MFJ equipment, bad build quality and stuff like that. I found the stuff okay, to be honest, and I don't want to be investing thousands in things. So the antenna switch is basically you have from the radio to the tuner, before the between the tuner and the radio, you have a switch where you can basically as the signal's coming in from your antenna through your tuner, you split the cable to send to have your SDR receive the signal. And what the switch does is every time you transmit that shared line, it shunts the SDR to ground. So in other words, it protects the SDR when you're transmitting. So is that a too long of a way of answering that question? Short answer is it's not sharing the antenna because I have an IF out. But for those that don't know, if you can't do that, you can get an antenna switch. I actually sold Derek there took my antenna switch because I didn't need it anymore. And they are not too expensive, even new. Are they, Derek? I don't know. I think they're about €80 or something like that. But then you're looking at importing them as well, so you're probably maybe up to the 100 or maybe more. I'm not sure. But I suppose the point I'm trying to make is you don't need to go and buy the newest top of the range radio. To me, that's pointless actually starting off. Don't go wasting loads of money on unless you really know what you're doing and you know you're in it for the long haul. Don't do that, because it's a bottomless. It's like any hobby, right? It's a bottomless pit. The radio that you see on screen, I got that for, I think it was €250. That's a weird thing about amateur radio as well. Even the older radios somewhat hold their value because there's, I suppose it's a finite pool of equipment out there, and some of them are better than others. That one, the Yaesu FTA40, is an excellent old radio. It's top notch. Nothing goes wrong with it. It's like, I don't know what it's like. It's like driving a dumper. It's just it's very tolerant of mistakes. It's and if you can get something like that, there's a few websites that rate older radios. If you just go there, they'll tell you what the good older ones are. Go for that in the first instance, and then if you want the SDR feature, you can get the antenna switch and you'll be fine. That's what I had. I had this on an SDR play, or an SDR, or you can get an RTL dongle or whatever. But a lot of the newer radios, if maybe if we can, no, that's not working that well. I don't know if I can bring it up. Yeah, see, there's a delay on YouTube here. Sorry, so I'm trying to see what I'm doing. You can see that some of these, even these newer, let's say in the last 10 years radios, they actually have SDR waterfalls in them. I'll just hit the scope button there. Yeah, I don't know if you can see that. These are not quite SDRs. These like pre-ICOM 7300 radios, but they have a waterfall feature on them. So you could go for something like that. But the thing is, they're okay. They're useful-ish. You can't really see it that well just because of the contrast on the screen. To be honest, if you're going for the SDR, you probably want the big screen display, like on the computer there. It's just it's way more user friendly. The problem with the radios, I suppose, is especially the newer radios. Now, some people are okay with it. I'm not great with it. I like knobs and buttons and stuff like that on the radio. It's just I'm kind of an analog person that way, especially if you need to make quick adjustments on the radio. Otherwise, a lot of the settings on the newer radios they're different, but look, they're different but the same. The ASUs and the ICOMs. There's a lot of menu-driven stuff on the radio, so you have to get into lists and then down lists and change this and change that. If you want to get into the granularity of changing the filtering or the processing and all that kind of stuff, and it can be, a bit of a pain. Whereas if you're pumping a raw signal out into an SDR, say here, like I am on the screen, you can manipulate that through the interface on the screen, so it just makes things a little bit easier. Whereas the SDR on the Yaesu, it's not that easy to use. Bottom line, it's not intuitive enough to make it to make rapid adjustments. Put it that way. And where that makes a difference is when you're doing things like DXing. So you've got that science station and in Antarctica, and it's really weak, and you want to, you just have to change the filtering just to block out some noise, or there's an interference spike there or whatever. You need to be able to do that stuff really quickly. Now, I know the older guys, they just intuitively knew how to do this with the older radios, in an analog sense. and but you can do that on the SDR. You can notch out, use the filters, the notches and that kind of stuff very, very quickly by just clicking on bits of interference or whatever. So yeah, there's that. Okay, if yeah, if there's any other questions, otherwise I'm gonna say goodbye. And thanks very much for joining us. I hope it's somewhat of a help. In some ways, it's more about bringing people together. You know, it's just so like-minded people can have a chat, and that you know that we're there. You know, that our own club is there, or just us as individuals. We're here, and we're there on Twitter, and we're there on Facebook, and we're there on YouTube. If you comment on the videos, we don't get to everything super quick because look, I mean, we're all just like, you know, volunteers or whatever. But you know, if you have a question, just pop it in there whenever, and you know, we'll get back to you as soon as we can, and we'll update you when we're back in person in the club. And to those of you taking the exam on the 11th, best of luck. I hope you all do really well. So I'm going to sign off. 7-3, as they say in radio speak. Best regards. And what I'm going to do now is going to jump into Zoom and say hello to anyone who's on Zoom. Bye. Yeah, I'm still looking at myself on the delay here. It's hilarious.